Hello and welcome to Reading Language Arts Redesign, part of the Texas Education Agency's HB 3906 series. Today we'll cover the highlights of the redesigned Reading Language Arts, or RLA, STAR assessments. House Bill 3906's near-term STAR redesign will be implemented starting in the 2022-23 school year and has four main components: transition to online assessments, new item types, adding writing to RLA assessments, and incorporating cross-curricular passages. This video will focus on the last two components, which impact RLA assessments. This video covers two components of the redesigned RLA assessments. First, the elimination of the standalone writing assessment and subsequent implications for assessing the new RLA TEKS, and second, the integration of cross-curricular content within informational passages on the grades 3 through English 3 STAR assessments. With that, let's dive in. HB 3906 requires the elimination of standalone writing tests in grades 4 and 7 in the 2021-22 school year. In 2019, school districts across the state began to implement new Reading and Language Arts Academic Standards, or TEKS, which emphasize the interconnectedness of the four domains of language, which are reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Implementation of both HB 3906 and the new Reading and Language Arts Standards ushered a redesign of the STAR assessments. Instead of assessing writing separately in grades 4 and 7, the redesigned Reading and Language Arts STAR will assess reading and writing together at every assessed grade level. The redesigned RLA assessment will continue to meet all federal requirements under the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA. This law requires states to administer annual assessments that are aligned with the full breadth and depth of the state academic standards. Starting in 2023, the redesigned STAR Reading and Language Arts assessments will include several new item types. As an interim step prior to full implementation, single select multiple choice items that assess revising and editing will be field tested at every grade level in grades 3 through 8 in 2022. These new writing items will be based on the multiple choice format of revising and editing items currently assessed in grades 4 and 7 and end of course high school tests. Samples of these items are currently available on the TEA website. For more information on new item types, check out the new item types video, which is part of the HB 3906 series. In the past, students demonstrated writing proficiency by responding to a standalone writing prompt, which was not linked to any of the passages in the test. You can see an example of this type of prompt on your screen. The redesigned RLA assessments will include a writing prompt or task in every grade level test. However, these new writing prompts will require students to read and respond to a passage. This type of writing task will measure higher order thinking skills, including reasoning, analysis, and communication. This is an example of what the new writing prompts may look like in STAR. In this example, students read a single literary excerpt and respond to the prompt using evidence from the text to support their responses. The implementation of the redesigned assessments will occur over the course of a multi-year period. This timeline demonstrates a high-level overview of that redesign. In 2021, the grades 4 and 7 standalone assessments will be administered for the last time. In 2022, multiple-choice writing field test items will be included in every grade level, and in 2023, the Reading and Language Arts STAR assessments will include reading and writing items. The assessments will also include both multiple-choice items and new item types, including writing prompts. Another feature of the redesigned RLA STAR assessments is the integration of cross-curricular content within informational passages. The science of reading is typically meant to encompass the large body of research-based reading instruction. This research-based instruction is composed of 5 elements: foundational skills, text complexity, knowledge coherence, text-based responses, and assessment practices. I'll pause to give you some time to read more about each component. Reading comprehension requires students to be able to both accurately decode words and understand the words being spoken. The number of words a student can decode times the number of words they know, or language comprehension, equals reading comprehension. For years, we've known that knowledge plays a big role in reading comprehension. This is why every literacy textbook includes at least a small section on building background knowledge. But what's been unclear is how and why knowledge is so important to reading comprehension. In 1988, researchers sought to quantify how much comprehension was impacted by knowledge. They studied this by comparing the relative impact of reading ability to the relative impact of knowledge on a particular topic. To do this, they asked a group of 7th and 8th grade students to read a passage about baseball and then assess the students' comprehension of the passage using verbal retelling, reenactment with figurines, verbal summary, and rating ideas from the story in terms of importance. Students were grouped according to their reading ability and their prior knowledge of baseball into one of the 4 categories you see on this slide: low reading ability and high knowledge of baseball, low reading ability and low knowledge of baseball, high reading ability and high knowledge of baseball, and high reading ability and low knowledge of baseball. The results indicated that the low reading ability students who had a high knowledge of baseball outperformed the high reading ability students who had a low knowledge of baseball. There was little difference between the 2 high knowledge groups and the 2 low knowledge groups. With sufficient prior knowledge, low ability students performed similarly to higher ability students. Other similar studies have yielded very similar results. This goes to show that content matters. Teaching content is teaching reading. Selecting text that builds students' knowledge of the world is crucial. Much of the time in elementary classrooms that could be spent teaching social studies or science is spent teaching reading strategies, such as identifying the central idea or activating prior knowledge. Research shows that these reading strategies may help students, but they most often lead to a one-time boost in performance. Choosing content that teaches students about the world and increases their general knowledge will have a bigger impact on comprehension than simply teaching reading strategies. Subject matter knowledge is critical when comprehending text. Regardless of reading ability, students with high subject matter knowledge comprehend text at higher rates than students with low subject matter knowledge. Since students are exposed to this subject matter knowledge through instruction in the TEKS, ensuring that STAR passages include content aligned to those TEKS will help level the playing field when it comes to the statewide STAR assessments. By the time the redesigned RLA STAR assessments go operational in the spring of 2023, a significant percentage of the informational passages will link to cross-curricular topics from science, social studies, fine arts, technology, and to a lesser degree, mathematics. During the passage identification process, priority will be given to the passages that provide these links. Drawing on subject area content all students have access to will encourage cross-curricular learning and teaching, activate student schema, and reinforce academic vocabulary. While all students benefit from repetition and scaffolded instruction, this is particularly true for struggling readers and English learners. A stronger schema also helps students develop vocabulary faster. Nearly a century of research shows that vocabulary is the biggest factor in reading comprehension. Think back to the simple view of reading. The number of words you can decode times the number of words you know, or language comprehension, equals reading comprehension. A student's vocabulary has an exponential effect on what they can comprehend. When we try to learn vocabulary words in isolation, we can't remember them for very long. They aren't committed to long-term memory storage, but we've found that vocabulary does stick when it's introduced as part of existing schema. Fortunately, knowledge and vocabulary are tightly linked, like 2 sides of the same coin. As a student builds knowledge, they're also building vocabulary related to the topic that they're reading or learning about, and in doing so, exponentially expanding the number of words they can comprehend. A landmark 1997 study found that reading or listening to a series of texts on the same topic can yield as much as 4 times the vocabulary growth as providing direct instruction or reading disconnected texts. Knowledge-building instructional materials prioritize cross-curricular content integration, similar to the approach that will be taken with informational passages on the grades 3 through English EOC STAR assessments. By the spring of 2024, 100% of informational passages on the grades 3 through English EOC STAR assessments will be aligned to cross-curricular topics. Because the purpose of writing informational text is to explain, clarify, or educate the reader, there's going to be a clear link that can be made to subjects such as science and social studies. Literary texts, on the other hand, are written primarily to entertain the reader. Literary passages that appear in the RLA STAR assessments may reflect topics covered in other subject areas. However, there won't be a strict adherence to requiring this linkage. Exposing students to rich, authentic literature can improve vocabulary, reading comprehension, reading ability, and language growth. It's important to note that while the selections on STAR assessments will be linked topically to other content area TEKS, students will only be assessed on RLA standards. Items on RLA assessments will not be aligned to other content area standards. Social studies content knowledge, for example, will not be assessed on the RLA STAR tests. The next two slides provide examples of text that reflect social studies or science topics. The example on this slide is from a STAR English EOC assessment and is a strong topical link to the social studies TEKS. To graduate on the Foundation High School program in Texas, students must earn 3 credits in social studies. Students have the option of selecting either World History, World Geography, or a comparable AP or IB World History or World Geography course to fulfill the 3rd social studies credit. Whether a student takes World History or World Geography, they would have some background knowledge to access when reading or comprehending this selection. In the column on the left of the chart are a few examples of standards in common between World History and World Geography that this passage aligns to. These would include locating places and regions of historical significance, analyzing the influence of human and physical geographic factors on major events in world history, such as the Indian Ocean or the opening of the Panama and Suez Canals. The column on the right lists sample vocabulary from these 2 courses that appears in or is supported by the content of this passage. Students can draw on their background knowledge and familiar vocabulary to enhance their comprehension of this passage. As an example, having knowledge of canals would aid students in better understanding key points made by the author about the impact and benefits of more efficient global trade. This next example is a literary passage from a Grade 4 STAR reading assessment. This passage aligns nicely to certain life science TEKS from grades 1 through 4. Similar to the prior example, you'll see examples of these TEKS listed in the left-hand column of the chart. Those range from observing, exploring, illustrating, and comparing the life cycles of animals to investigating the stages or changes insects, plants, and animals undergo. The column on the right illustrates some of the life science vocabulary that appears in or is supported by the contents of this passage. In this case, understanding how insects undergo a series of changes supports student understanding of the themes of growth and change found in this tale about a caterpillar. As noted in the previous slide, the implementation of passages aligned to cross-curricular topics will be phased in. The identification and field testing of passages that eventually make their way into a STAR assessment is a multi-year process. In 2020, the process began with the identification and development of passages linked to other area TEKS. In spring 2021, informational passages with cross-curricular links are introduced for the first time. The number of passages with these cross-curricular links will increase each year until the spring of 2024, when 100% of informational passages on the grades 3 through English 3 STAR meet this criteria. If you want to learn more about the other components of the near-term STAR redesign, please view our additional HB 3906 videos. If you have any questions about the STAR redesign for Reading Language Arts, contact the Curriculum Standards and Student Support or the Student Assessment Divisions at the email addresses on the screen. You can also send your questions to the TEA Student Assessment Help Desk. Thanks for watching today's video.